There is this Twitter account, Board Republic, which shared Warwick Davis' photo alongside his family. The photo is taken during the premiere of 2011's Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows. The family appearance raised a lot of conversation online. Mainly, is it ethical for disabled couple to get children, considering there's a high chance that they will pass their genetic traits to their offsprings? NMH Burger writes, why would they do this to those innocent kids, with crying emoji? Akoma Joshua echoes, it's wickedness. Seriously, no parent will allow his or her own deformity pass on to their children. You know that life of a small person is extremely difficult, and you know that this is a genetic trait that is passed on to offspring, and yet you decide to pass it to another person. Doesn't sound like love, wrote Erickson. Now, to understand the ethicality of whether a disabled couple should reproduce, it's best to look at Warwick's condition. Being the actor with the highest average gross revenue of all time, Warwick Davis has starred in some of the biggest franchises, including Star Wars, Harry Potter, and Leprechaun. Davis is married to Samantha, who also suffers dwarfism. Samantha suffers the most common condition in dwarfism, where the arms and legs are typically short but the torso is normal length. For Davis, however, he has a rare genetic condition, a condition he passed to two of his surviving children. I say surviving because the couple lost their first son 11 days for inherited conditions from both parents. Their woes would continue after the couple miscarried their second son at 19 weeks. Given the painful experiences the two have experienced, resulting from their conditions, you can see where the critics are coming from. But is it really enough to deny them the privilege to reproduce? Wrongful life is when a severely disabled child, through the child's legal guardian, sues for failing to prevent the child's birth. For example, a child and the child's parent will sue a doctor or hospital for failing to provide information about the disability during the pregnancy or a genetic disposition before the pregnancy. Had the mother been aware of this information, it is argued she would have had an abortion or chosen not to conceive at all. However, wrongful life is putting the blame on the doctor. But what if the mother had been provided with information about the potential disability of their offspring during pregnancy but decided to conceive the child despite the warnings? Is she to blame? Well, legally the answer is no, but ethically, is the mother to blame? Principle of parental responsibility maintains that prospective parents are morally obligated to consider the kind of life their offspring are likely to have and refrain from having children if their lives will be sufficiently awful. But what is sufficiently awful? Laura Paddy considers the example of Huntington's disease, an incurable disease that is mostly inherited. The symptoms usually appear between the ages of 35 and 50, which include involuntary movements, memory loss, chronic depression, as well as personality changes like paranoia, violent behavior, and maniac activity. The disease lasts approximately 15 to 20 years. HD inflicts severe and prolonged suffering on its victim. It is a horrible way to die. It is documented. Therefore, Laura maintains that individuals at a high risk of transmitting a serious disease to their offsprings are unable to provide them with at least a normal opportunity for a good life, and therefore, such individuals should not reproduce. However, judgments about the values of life are subjective. They vary depending on the individual's experience, personality, and general approach to life, a sentiment that Laura acknowledges. Optimists can list diseased or handicapped persons who have lived fruitful lives. They can also find individuals who seem genuinely glad to be alive. Such example of an optimist is Alo Gadre. His father died of HD, which means that Alo has a 50% risk of developing the disease. Despite this, he decided to have children, thereby imposing on each child a 50% chance of inheriting the disease. His reasoning? I haven't had a tragic life, I have had a very good life. The goodness of my life will not be destroyed if it turns out that I have Huntington's. I won't regret having been born or resent my parent for having had me. So why is it wrong to have kids? I can give them a decent chance for a good life. John Arras poses the same question, in this case with HIV-infected women. Should such women to forego childbearing for the sake of the children if already pregnant? Should they abort for the sake of the fetus? However, the moral obligation of HIV-infected women to avoid conception is complicated by two factors. First, there is the pretty chance that such women will not pass the virus to their babies, given at the time the risk of HIV infection through any given pregnancy is somewhere between 20 to 30%. Second, the severity of the disease varies widely. On a relatively small percentage, between 10 to 20% of those born with HIV infected actually fit in the worst case scenario of early infection. The rest will develop different and often less lethal manifestations of AIDS later on. However, John also argues that even the better off AIDS babies have lives that are decidedly grim. For one, more than half will die before the age of 7, and the rest will live with a reminder of impending death. Second, most HIV-infected babies are born to mothers and fathers who themselves are dying. Many of these parents are too sick to take care of their own children. In his eyes, it is morally wrong to knowingly conceive a child under such conditions. A less extreme example of such stories, a 59-year-old British woman who gave birth to twins in 1993. How this was possible was that the eggs were donated by a younger woman. The woman had to undergo the procedure in Rome, as the doctors in London had initially refused to perform such procedure because they believed she was too old to face emotional stress of being a mother. Through the British Secretary of Health, the explanation given was that women do not have the right to have a child. The child has a right to a suitable home. Another worry was that the post-menopausal women won't live long enough to rear children. According to the author of the silent passage Menopause, it's not a very nice prospect for a child of 10 or 12 to go to sleep every night praying that his or her mother will live as long as he needs her. However, the conclusion is that life is a mixture of good and bad, pleasure and pain. Children will have their suffering and adversity, and that is the price of the ticket.